Hey everybody, and welcome back to another max velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be breaking down another storm that'll be impacting the United States later this week that could cause some issues, including the threat for some severe weather and the potential for flooding. I'll give you the latest breakdown on everything that you need to know in this forecast, but let's first begin with what's happening across the United States on this beautiful Easter Sunday. We're going to begin with the Great Plains, and that is where we've been seeing some showers and storms throughout the day today. There's been a little bit of isolated severe weather with these storms as well, and that will be a concern tonight and even into tomorrow. We might see a couple of storms with maybe a little bit of large hail or damaging winds, but nothing too concerning. This is nothing like what we've seen recently. But back over into the northeast, we have a very dominant ridge. What this is basically doing is keeping that entire northeast region dry and as well as much warmer, and even across the Midwest and into the northern plains, much warmer conditions are starting to settle in, and that's going to be the trend this week, which will set up more concerning features down the road with maybe some severe weather as we go into this upcoming weekend. Back just to the east of the mid-Atlantic region, that is where we've actually been seeing some showers and storms along a stationary frontal boundary. This will become a bit more of a concern next week. That is when we could see a subtropical storm develop down in the Gulf of Mexico. More details on that here in just a second. But as I mentioned, a very dominant ridge is dominating the United States this week. And even as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday, this is the jet stream. We'll have a very dominant area of high pressure across the United States with a small little feature down into near the Gulf Coast. That is where we might see a subtropical storm develop, as I just mentioned. More details on that here in a second. Once we go into Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, that trend will continue. Once we go into this upcoming weekend, we'll have to watch for a trough developing. This will be something to watch for maybe some severe weather, maybe even a small winter storm as well, back up into the northern United States. And this could actually bring severe weather across a large area, but it does not seem to be anything like what we've seen recently at this time. But there may be some changes to that as we get closer. But for right now, I'm not too concerned about a full-blown outbreak, but we very well could see some severe weather, at least isolated to maybe scattered across a very large area of the United States going into this upcoming weekend. Now, let's take you through what this actually looks like on the future radar over the next several days. Beginning with early this week, again, we'll be watching over on the East Coast that dominant high pressure system. This will essentially bring warmer air to areas like the Midwest and even as far north as southern Canada. Once we go closer to midweek around Wednesday, look closely at the Gulf of Mexico. That is where a subtropical storm could develop, which is quite similar to a tropical storm. This might bring some gusty winds and maybe even some flooding rains as we head into Wednesday and Thursday. Now, this will not be too concerning, and it will likely not become an actual tropical storm, but it is definitely going to be something to watch for near Louisiana and maybe even near Mississippi and Alabama. That is where you might see some heavy rain, which could also lead to some flooding. But by Friday, that entire system really fizzles out due to a very strong high pressure system. Now, once we get closer to Friday, we're watching an entirely separate area. That's going to be across the Great Plains. This entire region, right now, it doesn't seem like it'll be an organized event, but we might see some severe weather across this region. Now, where that exactly happens is still a bit of an uncertainty point. But you can see here going into late Friday, there's a couple of areas to watch for maybe some severe weather, potentially back near the Kansas area and even into Texas. But again, I'm not too concerned right now about anything that crazy. Once we go into Saturday, that is when the threat for severe weather may start to shift a bit further to the east, and that is when a low pressure system might become a bit more organized back through the Midwest, and that actually could become a bit of a winter storm. But again, once we get past even Saturday, things become much more uncertain, but this will be an event to watch for very closely because this is really our next storm that's in our near future. Now, in terms of what's happening over the short term, look over the Great Plains. There will be a chance for some showers and storms throughout tonight and even into tomorrow. There will be a chance for some isolated severe weather, but I'm not overly concerned about significant severe weather, just isolated hail and gusty winds. That'll really be a threat for both tonight and tomorrow. Tuesday, it seems like things will start to simmer down a little bit. Back over on the Gulf Coast, as I mentioned, there will be a little subtropical storm as we go into Wednesday. This might bring some heavy rain to areas like Louisiana, and again, nothing really too concerning here, but there is a chance for at least some isolated flash flooding and high gusty winds. And in terms of the gusty winds, you'd actually see here, it gets upwards of 50 miles per hour just south of New Orleans, and this is usually what happens with like a weak tropical storm. But again, this is a subtropical event that we're watching for. The water temperatures are not really even that warm here near the Gulf Coast, but overall wind gusts maybe upwards of 50 to 55 miles per hour may occur for about 6, 12, 18 hours back near the southern Louisiana coastline. Elsewhere, I'm not really expecting any concerns there, but just make sure you're taking the proper precautions. Just treat it as if it's a severe storm, if you will, maybe around 60 miles per hour. Those are the sort of precautions that you need to take just in case you're in that region. In terms of rainfall accumulation, again, not overly concerning, but there will be a chance for upwards of 1 to 3 inches of rain. I wouldn't rule out an isolated spot near 5 inches of rain. And what we just saw the other day back down in southern Louisiana, it brought upwards of 14 inches of rain just south of Lake Charles. So this is entirely a possibility with something like this. But again, the chance of significant flooding remains very low, and it will remain very isolated as well. Not nearly as concerning as what we saw with that stationary frontal boundary over this past late week and even into the early weekend. Now, you might be wondering, what are the temperatures looking like this week across the United States? Well, this is the temperature anomaly. Red is representing above average temperatures, blue is representing below average temperatures. And once we go into early this week, really one thing stays consistent, and that is the temperature staying below average in the southeast and mid-Atlantic. Meanwhile, much warmer air is ongoing back up into the northern tier of the United States. And once we go into Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, a huge shot of warm air will be ongoing back up in Minnesota and Wisconsin. We could see high temperatures near 80 degrees in some areas. It'll get very warm, potentially near record-breaking high temperatures. And once we get into Friday into Saturday, really warm air continues on the eastern half of the United States. Meanwhile, once that low pressure system develops, that is when cooler air will start to usher in back through the Great Plains. It will not be a Arctic blast by any means, but there will definitely be some cooler air there that will be a little bit more enjoyable for this time of the year, especially during the spring. In terms of temperatures Tuesday, again, it'll be really warm in some areas, upwards of the 70s and 80s even in South Dakota. Remember, South Dakota just had a blizzard the other day, so this is wild what we're seeing over there. Even Denver, Colorado could get upwards of the mid 80s, and also near 90 degrees in northwest Kansas as we go into Wednesday. Warmer weather is ahead for this week, but again, severe weather may return closer to the end of the week. Make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe as well if you've not already. This forecast is brought to you by Platinum Contracting.